Good evening and welcome to Mindful Live 175. I am your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is presently the 24th of January 2023, 9:56 p.m. in the beautiful Twin Isle Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. The role of the president is a political office. Yes, it is Subaru 868. It is a political office, but it does not have much political power. So, what difference does it make, I guess? Kervon says, unleash the dragon. And I believe he's talking about the latest news coming out from the Prime Minister's office that we got permission. We got permission from Daddy to go make some more money. The US had to give us permission. And as I was starting saying previously, before we started over there on YouTube, I started saying that last night I was talking about this. When we look at the interactions in global conflicts, in global disagreements, very often when we take it in from the media perspective, very often what we see is we have a view of this as a good guy versus the bad guy. So Maduro is a bad guy. Chavez before him was a bad guy. And here's the thing, I don't necessarily disagree with putting them in the bad guy box because they very well may be villains in their own right. But the thing is, because one side may really and truly be a bad guy does not automatically make the other side a good guy. So in this case, the United States, the reason the United States put the sanctions and the reason they are removing the sanctions may have nothing to do with who might be a good or a bad guy, but have all to do with selfish benefit in terms of benefit towards the country. The United States now are giving us the permission to do business with Venezuela, while nothing really has changed in Venezuela, kind of sells out the game. Venezuela has not changed their political makeup. Venezuela is still the same political entity that it was pretty much under Chavez. It's the same place. People are still fleeing Venezuela. So what changed? What magically changed now that the United States could say, you know what, we have rethought these sanctions and we decide that, you all can go ahead and do business with them. Let's dive into that story and see what the news says. Yeah. The big announcement, the PM's big announcement. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley is expected to announce, this was an article before he announced it, he already announced this. Once the US can't control you, you're automatically a bad guy. Yes, to some extent. And it's not only about control, it's about benefit, directly benefit too. So there are some people maybe they can't control, but they're fine with that because they're gaining benefit, even though they cannot control them like that. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley was expected to make that announcement. This is a major development that could significantly help TNT meet its natural gas shortage and comes after months of efforts by the Rowley administration to broker a deal that would see Venezuelan gas come to Point Lisas. Reuters news agency is reporting that the US Treasury Department has granted approval, and it could mean that the government could now execute the 2018 agreement, which was signed in Caracas in the presence of the Prime Minister of Trinidad, Dr. Keith Rowley, and Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro. We'll see the export of natural gas from its offshore Mariscal Sucre plays located about 40 kilometers to the north of Venezuela's Sucre state to a platform to the northwest of Trinidad owned jointly by Shell and the Trinidad government. Shell's pipelines will be used to transport gas from the Dragon Field to Hibiscus platform. And you see, this makes sense for us. And this is something where Trinidad could benefit and make quite a bit of money in the long term, even without the natural resources in and of itself. Good night, Speaker Pelosi. Yeah, we are kind of late. I was kind of late too. I'm not here for I haven't been here very long already. So yeah, we could use the fact that we are already an established oil and gas state with established supply chains and value-added chains where they could bring in the raw material here, and we send it up the chain, adding value and then gaining some money off of it. We don't even, our oil and gas resources could be depleted, and we could still be running this kind of business. Especially the fact that our two nearest South American neighbors, Guyana and Venezuela, are both massive oil and gas producers. This is an avenue that could see Trinidad and Tobago up on top of making money globally without even having to continue producing the same level of natural resources we currently are. So down that avenue, this makes a lot of sense. You could understand it. We bring the Venezuelan gas here, we get some profit off of it running through our systems that already exist. The systems are already there, it's just that there isn't enough gas. We are not currently producing enough gas to supplement those, to supply those systems. So we get some Venezuelan gas to bring in, and we add some more money to it. Now, the US gave us permission all of a sudden for this. We didn't have permission all the time. All of a sudden, we got permission. This doesn't have to do with Venezuela becoming all of a sudden a good place. This has to do with the US trying to squeeze Russia and not trying to supply Russia with resources. So now they're forced to try and get the resources from other places. So Russia is bad guy number one in the world. So seeing as Russia is now bad guy number one, people who were previously known as the main bad guys, we could recalibrate their position in this bad guy hierarchy and maybe do some business with them. And I think a statement coming from Guyana's president, especially thinking about this in the same energy conference, makes a lot of sense. Guyana president, region must speak out against world bias. Guyana's president, Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali, has urged the region's oil and gas producers to speak out against biases from the outside world, which see a lack of investments coming to the Caribbean and Latin America, even as toxic polluting coal plants are resuming operations across the globe. So, a lot of this actually has to do with ESG. It sounds good on paper, but boy, Venezuela is a really unstable society. I have no doubt about that. All I think we're looking for from Venezuela, we're not looking to go in there and fix their politics. All they have to do is make sure that the amount of gas we want is sent through Shell's pipeline and brought in to us. That's all. Currently, I believe they're flaring off a lot of extra gas. So they have a lot of extra gas that they cannot use, they cannot sell. So beautiful, we are going to come in there and take that spot. Granted, we know they are an unstable society, but money talks. All they have to do is send the oil. Coal, who using coal in 2023? Well, that's the thing. Right now in Germany, I don't know how many of you have been following this in Germany recently. I spoke about this last night briefly. The climate activist, young Greta Thunberg, the climate activist who stayed out from school and used a whole lot of carbon dioxide to travel around the world to talk and make no difference really and truly. But Greta Thunberg was in Germany protesting that the German government was looking to reopen coal mines. Germany is reopening coal mines because when old orange guy, old big orange, in the global news, I don't know if you know who is old big orange, Mr. Donald Trump, back in somewhere around 2017, 2018 time period, he went to Europe and he warned Germany that in buying so much natural gas from Russia, they are setting up themselves for problems. And Germany was moving away from nuclear energy. That's why what the president of Guyana is saying there makes a lot of sense. A lot of this doesn't have to do with environmentalism or anything to do with green energy. If it had to do with green energy, then they would have moved to nuclear energy and then fixed all of this. But the problem is nuclear energy is easy and relatively cheap. They moved to an expensive green energy where someone else could make a lot of money from it. Thank you, dreaded 001. Thank you very much. So, Germany laughed at Big Orange. When Big Orange went to the European Union and told them, listen, if you all continue, you all are going to end up in trouble. You all are going to end up... They laughed at him. They have that on video. laughing at the man. And then what would you know? Mr. Putin decides that he's ready to take back Ukraine. He thinks Ukraine should be part of the fatherland, and he's ready to take them back. And all of a sudden now, no natural gas from Russia, and Germany has to go scraping the bottom of the barrel looking for dirty, nasty, stinking coal to go and try to refire up their coal plants. China has been pumping coal ever since. China has never stopped. China been doing what China been doing. China is the bad man out there. China will come to the global conferences, sign the environmental protection agreement. Sign it. Yes, they will sign it. Go back to China and build 50 new coal plants. Normal. Like it's just any other regular Monday morning. China made a deal with Canada. To do the recycling for Canada. You know, that was kind of China's scope when they started the whole globalism thing. China's idea was, we would do a lot of the industrial things for you in this faraway place, and you know, we are looking to make this thing better. So the Canada made a deal to send all of their plastic over to China to recycle. China makes decisions as a people, a very loyal dictatorship. China makes decisions as a people. If by as a people you mean the people at the head of the Chinese Communist Party, then yes, they make decisions as those people. Those people make decisions on behalf of everyone else. No, China doesn't make decisions by the people. Stop it. Yo, Riri, how come you're over on Instagram there? Usually you're more on the TikTok side. What's the good? So, China said, we will do that recycling for you. Yes, Canada, we will do that recycling for you. And they sent all the plastic over to China and then dumped all of it in the ocean. Recycling done. And Canada paid them top dollar for that. So China really doesn't care about it that way. China been pumping out those coal plants. All right, understood. Renisi. So China doesn't care like that. China been pumping out those coal plants. So a lot of the talk on environmentalism, when you actually look at the facts, you look at the data that is presented to you, it does not actually line up. That's why the Guyana's president here is making a lot of sense. He made the call on Monday while speaking at the Energy Chamber in answering the question as to the remaining life of fossil fuel and natural gas. When we have this open and honest conversation, we will see how lopsided that conversation is in relation to the end of fossil fuel and gas, Ali said. He noted that the pandemic, climate changes, imported inflation, and higher energy costs have left the world grappling with energy and food insecurity. He said the world also recently saw some strange movements, not rooted in reality, but in a policy agenda driven by a few countries. What I think what doctor, I believe he's a doctor, right? Yes, Dr. Ali is speaking about there is ESG. I think Dr. Ali is talking about environment, social, and governance policies. Environment, social, and governance policies. ESG policies that many in the financial sector have taken a hold of. Now, I've spoken about this previously. I've done some videos on this already. ESG, the general idea is that the financial institutions, every business goes to the financial institution. When you need to make an investment, it's not like you take out your pocket change. It's not like you dip in your wallet. Generally speaking, you go to financial institutions and get your projects financed by them. The problem is these institutions now have an ESG policy where they look at companies, private companies, and they have, as it were, a check sheet to see what your environmental policies are. If you are releasing carbon, if you are employed in the oil and gas sector, then they look at your social policies to see your stand on LGBTQIA2+ policies, to see your stance on several other social policies. Then they look at your governance policies and your stance in how you deal with governance in and around your society, your country. And then if you pass those standards, then they can lend you money. If you do not pass those standards, then they will not lend you money. That is ESG. The strange thing is, I did a video about probably a month ago talking about one of our businessmen in Trinidad and Tobago, one of the Haddads, asking pleading with the international institutions to please bring ESG to Trinidad. I read this article and I'm like, what is this man doing? He's complaining that Trinidadian businesses get a bypass of the ESG policies, and he wants them to still hold Trinidad and Tobago businesses to the ESG policies. I'm like, please do not. Because it seems like many of these people with their ESG policies are more interested in shaping United States society and United Kingdom and European Union societies. So they are focusing a lot of their pressure on those societies. I don't want them to come here. And what Dr. Irfan Ali is talking about here is the reality that a lot of these policies, when you look at it, it's just a matter of a policy decision. It's not like it has something directly to do with the environment or making something better for anyone. Who is that businessman? Something Haddad. He's in charge of HADCO. I believe he is the chairman of HADCO. So you could look for HADCO ESG policies Trinidad and Tobago and you'd get that article right up there. Strange guy. He noted, this is going on now to Dr. Irfan Ali continuing, he noted that, right, these things were driven by some strange movements driven by policy agenda. We have seen an unwillingness to lend to companies related to oil and gas. That's what he's talking about there is directly ESG. An unwillingness to lend to companies related to oil and gas. We have seen the cost of capital increasing for companies related to oil and gas, Ali said. He lamented that tight capital meant companies would have to pass on costs to the consumer. That is, all industries supported by the energy sector. And what's so strange about this, as he's pointing out, they're doing this where they aren't lending to some oil and gas producers, but I wonder how Germany would be financing their new interests in coal. Do you think they will not finance Germany's new interests in coal? They just might. And the problem with this, though, is that they will increase the cost of energy. A lot of what they are doing is going to increase the cost of energy. But sometimes I suspect that some of these things are not coincidences, they are not mistakes, they are done that way on purpose. Listen to this. Low-cost electricity challenges green transition. PM at Energy Conference. Oh, true ninja. Yes, it is wokeism doing that. The prevailing low cost of electricity in Trinidad and Tobago poses a challenge to the transition to renewable energy sources. So said Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley as he addressed the 2023 Trinidad and Tobago Energy Conference at the Hyatt Regency yesterday. So, what Dr. Rowley was pointing out here is that in Trinidad and Tobago, the fact that our electricity costs so low is going to make it very difficult to get into green energy, because as we pointed out at the very beginning, green energy is very expensive. Everywhere in the world that green energy is done, it is very expensive. Way more expensive than oil and gas. All the time. So, it would be difficult for us to go and create these alternatives when the reality is the thing we have right now is cheaper. Who is going to want to go and pay for a new alternative when the new alternative is more expensive? Who is going to want to do that? This makes me wonder if some of the reasons that we see this ESG policy going about raising the price purposefully of oil and gas is to push us into this direction. You see, if ESG policies can, through the private sector, through the financial sector, through the financial industry, if the ESG policies could strangle the oil and gas sector for financing, which is going to cause the oil and gas sector to pull back on the amount of projects they do, on their job scopes, which is going to cause the oil and gas sector to increase the price they sell their goods at, then all of a sudden, green energy starts to become more competitive in pricing. That's the reality. The thing is, for wealthy people, paying more for energy might not be a bad thing. If you're talking about some of those northern European countries, maybe a lot of the people, they could afford to pay more for energy and they would pay more to help the Earth's environment, and so be it. That might be grand. But when you're talking about that, and you're talking about lower income countries, what you're talking about is people falling off the grid. People that will not be able to afford electricity anymore. At all. Because the only reason they can afford it is because it is so cheap. Many of the countries in the global south are now hitting into their industrial revolutions, are now pushing industrialization in their countries. What aided a lot of the countries in the global north, the Western world, the US, European Union, what aided many of those countries in that booming of their financial fortunes was the industrial age, where we rapaciously took resources from the Earth's surface, from the Earth's crust, and used it. Lots of that being the oil and gas. So to now say, after the global north, the Western world has reached their point of wealth, after that, now we are going to make power more expensive for everyone on Earth. That seems really underhanded. RL says change is already happening. Gas-powered cars are already being halted in production in some places. Everything is going electric and green energy. The problem with that is there are not enough electric batteries for everyone in the world to have an electric car. They know this. There isn't enough cobalt for there to be enough electric batteries for everyone in the world to have an electric car. Where they mine these resources from are slave mines in Africa with children doing the work. So the talk like this is somehow better for the world is a lie. It's just a redirection of the money making scheme. The guy, Mr. Al Gore, that is a billionaire right now flying private jets all around the world, but somehow is the environmental climate czar. He's the one always speaking about the problems with the climate all around the world. He has made billions of dollars off of green energy and moving into green economies since the 2000s when he started with these ideas. He has made billions of dollars saying that the world is going to be covered over by 2012 with water. None of his predictions come true, but still he is speaking in every conference and keeps raking in more money by investing in the back end in these same green industries while forcing it in the front end, forcing it in, well, that sounds really weird to say. But investing on one side and then forcing policy on the next side to herd the world into the investments that he has already made. It seems really dishonest. It seems really dishonest. And it seems like you are chopping off the bottom of the ladder after you have already reached the top. You already reached up and now you're kicking off the ladder. No one else must get to reach here. Now we are going to use green energy the world over. No one must use this dirty oil and gas after you have become a billionaire off the dirty oil and gas. What's going on? How does that work? How does that figure? How does that make sense? And I think it's silly when we see so often people on our side of the world seeming to really lean into this thing. Like they somehow get into their minds that a European living in Europe as a billionaire, an American living in the United States as a billionaire, that they somehow have the most care about the Earth's environment. Everything they see is somehow sound, and they are only seeing these things for the purpose of benefiting the Earth. I'm sorry, I don't have that kind of blind hope. My apologies. Good night, TEMPA in your center. What is your center? Your center of gravity? Electric cars which get their energy from the burning of fossil fuels is not fully buying it. Well, I suppose they would be thinking that the electric cars that would eventually get their power from the renewable resources. But as it stands right now, the electric cars do get their power from fossil fuels. And here's the other part. To produce the electric car requires a lot of fossil fuels. This is a fad. It isn't about the environment. It is about a fad. That's it. And the thing is, nothing is wrong with you being faddish about it. To me, nothing is wrong with you being a faddish about it. But if that was the honest view, that they were making it clear, just as SUVs came in at one point in time as a fad, everyone liked the idea of an SUV and everyone wants one, great. This electric vehicle idea is pretty similar. It's not that it's going to be all that better for the environment. No. None of that. No. No. If you want an electric vehicle, you can have one, and it's more quiet, and you may get better fuel consumption. And to me, that's the direction we should be pushing in with these things. And I think if we do these things more honestly, we'd recognize that a lot of the technological advances will take over anyhow. If electric cars are better than gas cars, you wouldn't need to beat anyone over their head to buy a car or buy an electric car over a gas car. When internal combustion engines took over from horse-drawn buggies, you didn't have to beat anybody to get rid of their horse-drawn buggies to buy a car. You didn't have to do that. The thing that was better was chosen by the customers. RL says it's all about a political statement, not really about being better. That I totally agree with. So, let's jump in and move to another gear. We're going to be talking now about crime. Crime in Trinidad and Tobago. Crime in Trinidad and Tobago always seems to be a significant issue. Double murders, triple murders, another double murder, another triple killing. Seems to be no end. And the police themselves are involved in some of it too. A recent triple killing in Mayaro. And the residents are like, yeah, good job, police. Good job, police. Let's check some of this. God bless the police. That's what the Mayaro residents are saying. God bless the police. Robbery suspects shot dead in Mayaro. The police have come in for praise as Mayaro residents cover in fear following the police shooting of 3 suspected bandits in a confrontation at an abandoned beach house in Mayaro on Sunday night. Michael Maharaj, a fish vendor near Mayaro Junction, said he felt crime was so rampant that he could be a victim at any time. I could never feel safe because after all, this incident is an almost daily occurrence. Just the other day, at the fast service, the automated teller, the ATM, at 4 o'clock in the morning, they rob people there. Anywhere you go, you are in problems. The lotto boot is in danger. Everybody's in danger. It is a real problem for us to set. Hex Senpai says modern car overall is environmentally better, but is 0 to 60 a Tesla 3 polar bears could hold L. And to me, Hex Senpai, that's how you sell electric cars. You sell it as we sell everything. Consumerism. Why are we trying to reinvent the wheel? We're acting like we don't know what makes people buy goods. Consumerism. Consumerism is how we've been selling goods since we've been selling goods. You don't have to try now to all of a sudden try to appeal to man's good nature. Man doesn't have that good nature. Sorry, there isn't that good nature isn't there. Yes, polar bear numbers are increasing. They are surging actually. You see, that's my main area of study in university was environmental. And in the environmental degree, there are so many ideological hooks. where it's nearly like a religion preaching about the end days. And then when you look at some of the predictions that the environmental religion has about the end days, you recognize that the end days never seem to come according to this environmental religion. Many of the problems that the environmental religion has predicted are going to wipe out the world over the last 60 years have come and gone and not been an issue. The ones that may have really been problems, I'm not sure, but some of them may have actually just been solved. The ozone layer is a prime example. I remember growing up in the 90s, we always heard about the ozone layer and the hole in the ozone layer, and a hole is growing in the ozone layer. Now, they said the hole is closed now and it's building back. It is said that may have happened because we pulled back on our use of chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs. We slowed down our depletion of the ozone, and because of that, it pulled back. I don't know if it was that something we did change something, or it was never really too much of a problem. Either way, that shows something to me. Many of the problems that we think are intractable might actually be solvable, because human beings, we don't stay at one spot. We are dynamic. We figure things out. We come up with new ways how to do things. So, the prime example I like to talk about was there were headlines saying on the turn of the 21st century that horse poop is going to be a problem in New York City. There was a comic drawn in one of the newspapers at the time showing New York City covered in horse poop, because horse poop is going to take over the city. Everyone has their own horse-drawn buggy. Horse poop will take over the city. And then we innovated. Cars came and horse poop is no longer a problem. Carbon dioxide in the environment. There are already carbon sequestration capabilities where we are able to literally grab carbon from the environment and pull it out. The day that becomes profitable, where we could grab carbon out of the environment, pull it out, and make something useful. For example, I heard some people talk about graphene, which is a carbon compound that is extremely strong. If we are able to do some things like that, all of a sudden, we may get the problem where some businesses now are taking too much carbon out of the environment. Then the environmental religion is going to say, eventually we are going to have a problem where we are going to starve the trees of carbon dioxide, so now we have to pump more carbon dioxide into the environment. It's just the way how those things go. We innovate. We innovate. Good evening, Scafty. We innovate. Anyway, I was talking about crime. And the police killing of 3 alleged robbers down in Mayaro. 2 of the deceased have already been identified as Corey and Mata. The 3rd deceased man is not yet identified. It is alleged the 3 men, they robbed a KFC. We so me in here then. Me and get a good evening. Good evening, Rhea. My apologies. Where did my manners go? Good evening, Rhea. Welcome to the Mindful Life. You get your own wealth. All on your own. The 4 men the 4 men robbed a KFC driver. Listen, that's so low to me. It's so low. I remember in talking in some of my younger days, I used to say that, if I die and make a headline, I at least don't want to make a stupid headline. I always used to say that. That was a talking point I used to have. If you die and you die in a kind of way, just at least don't make a stupid headline. Let my death not be a kind of joke or something like that. Please. You went out stealing KFC. I think how much money I think it was $80 in cash they got from the KFC driver. $80 and KFC. And you're dead. You're dead over that. You dead over a 2-piece and fry. Like, imagine that. Police said St. Rose was released from jail last year after serving a 3-year term for armed robbery, possession of a firearm, and possession of ammunition. This St. Rose guy, just by the way, was 21 years old. So he was released last year when he was 20 after a 3-year stint in jail, which means he was arrested at 17 for armed robbery. Armed robbery was the arrest? Yes, armed robbery. Possession of a firearm and possession of ammunition. The Express yesterday visited the abandoned beach house where the deadly confrontation occurred. At the end of a concrete walkway at the side of the house, there were dried pools of blood. A bandana of the ground scattered on the ground, scattered across the walkway, were the remnants of a fast food meal of fries, pieces of biscuits, and chicken bones. Like, the whole scene is so belittling of the human lives. 3 young men lost their lives there. Three. Not 1, not 2. 3 young men lost their lives. And your crime scene is chicken bones, half-eaten biscuits, and empty fries bag. The whole situation is a sad meme. Yes, it really is. Now listen to this. Orphaned at 6 years old. At St. Rose's home at Belle Road in Mayaro, his aunt said she adopted him at 6 years old when he was left orphaned after the death of his parents in separate years to illness. Just looking at the home situation of the deceased men. One is an orphan, lost 2 of his parents, grown by his aunt. There's an article here that gives a little update on the other guy. Let me see if I could get his. He hanged with the wrong crowd. His grandmother is a church woman who tried her best with him. Corey was a quiet, peaceful, and humble person. She, his grandmother, said he had no reason to do what he did. So the next guy who was shot, only 2 of their identities have been released. One was raised by his aunt, the other raised by his grandmother. You're seeing a picture there already. You're seeing a picture there already. A cousin of Gilbert, Michelle Mohammed, said she believed that Gilbert was in the wrong place at the wrong time and would not have been armed with a weapon. Now, why I find that a bit curious, it's a bit curious to say that, is because the guy who he was with was just released last year for armed robbery, possession of a firearm, and possession of ammunition. So for the cousin of the deceased now to make it seem like, you know, no, not King Kaka, what's going on, bro? It's been a while. To make it seem like, you know, they weren't in any kind of real criminal thing. His cousin went on. She said she believed the police used excessive force on her cousin and friends and indicated her intention to lodge a report with the Police Complaints Authority. They are trying to make the children look like big bandits. Up to now, we do not know how he got caught up with his friends. They did not have any weapons. The police could have held them. That is what the police are for. They did not have to gun down people's children and leave them like dogs on the ground. Listen, I read this to point out to you, and I know this could be a bit controversial to some, but I spoke about this in a previous live. Statistically, and I hope you all could listen to what I'm saying. Med school done. Hey, King Kaka. Congratulations, bro. Congratulations. Glad to hear that. Glad to hear that, bro. Glad the persistence paid off. But yeah, I was pointing this out previously, statistically, and these statistics are coming out of the United States. A two-parent household is much less likely for a child to end up in prison. Good night, opinion box. Thank you. Good night, good night, good night. What's the good? Two-parent household, mother and father living with the child, have the lowest likelihood of their child ending up in jail, in prison. A single mother has, I believe it's 80% more likelihood. A single father stands the same chance of their offspring ending up in jail as a two-parent household with mother and father in the house. I am not saying this, I'm not pointing this out, and this statistic isn't to say mothers are not necessary. Obviously not. That's not true. That's asinine to even think about. But it shows you the purpose of fathers in a household and the purpose of males in society. A man would have never said what this female cousin said here. The reason these two boys may be dead, these two men, they aren't boys, I'm not even going to continue along that like the cousin did. The reason these two men may be dead may be because they were grown up with permissive female relatives, just like this cousin, who would say nonsense like, the boys, them, you didn't have to do all of that. That is too much. I think they're trying to make the children look like big bandits. The children died. The boys died with the KFC they stole from a hardworking man. And by the way, when you steal that KFC from that man, he has to pay for that out of his salary if he cannot prove otherwise. They died with the KFC in their hands. The fries, the bones, the biscuits were scattered around their bodies. Remember at the beginning of the first article I was reading with this, the guys in Miaro, the fisherman in Miaro was complaining that the crime situation in Miaro is out of control. They were robbing people at the ATMs, they were robbing people at the lotto booths. So who knows if it was the same group of merry men who were robbing people all around Miaro and they just happened to be caught here. But no, the cousin is, they're trying to make the men look like big bandits. The men are big bandits. They just put down some banditry. No one has to make them look like a big bandit when they have the evidence in their mouth and on their lips. And this permissive attitude, I remember I was arguing with Roni about this in a previous live. One of the regulars in the live, I was arguing with her about that. The permissive nature that many, and granted, it is something much more noticed in the female side of our species. Females are more permissive. The statistics would tell you that. And that may be needed for the mothers to be, but it shows why fathers are needed in society. You need people in society to say, this nonsense cannot stand. You cannot go about acting like this and expect that there would be no consequence. You cannot expect to be a big bandit out a road and act like you're a child inside. Yes, your big female relatives may still see you as the little popo that they cared and pinched the cheeks of, but you're a big man. And when you're behaving like a big man, you would be treated like that. Our society may be disintegrating because of things like this. Our society may be disintegrating very well for things like this. Rhea says, I firmly agree, Nathan. However, in saying that men are necessary, we have to have men realizing that men need to step up. Yes, well, why do you think I am saying this right now? That's the reason I'm talking about this. You could literally watch these men here who are grown by their aunt and their grandmother and see they were grown by their aunt and their grandmother, see what their female big cousin had to say about it, and then see the outcome of their life. See the outcome of their life. Then I urge you to do something. Go back. I know there's some bacchanal now with the ministry publishing it. But one girl just sued to find her Freedom of Information Act to see who was placed high, who placed highest in the essay results, and see how many of them have both mother and father in the picture. 100%. I'll tell it for you. 100%. That's a lesson. And it disappoints me. It disappoints me when I see people talking so permissively about the crime situation in Trinidad. That's true, X-Empire, I don't deny that, but we regularly speak on that. That's also true, Ice-B, that's also true. And the female cousin that was speaking like, you know, this is no big deal, this is no big deal. Just by the way, another article. Female KFC delivery driver robbed at gunpoint in Siparia. Because, you know, the female relative was saying, you know, the police wasn't supposed to act like that. The police wasn't supposed to take that so seriously. Try and hold the men and, you know, get them bail and they would be out by tomorrow. Female KFC delivery driver robbed at gunpoint in Siparia. And people don't seem to understand. Well, at least the bandits don't seem to understand that they are destroying their own communities like this. What do you think is going to happen if driver after driver is robbed every time they do a delivery? Where do you think that is going to end? How do you think that is going to end? What do you think is going to be the outcome? And the violence in Trinidad and Tobago, when you look at it, it's really something out of control. And I think some of that has to do with the protective services in and of itself. Because at the end of one of these articles, one of the family members pointed out that one of the deceased bandits wanted to be an army officer. He wanted to join the regiment. You know, he was aiming to join the regiment. And something strange I've noticed is that's a common theme. Regularly, when you hear about people involved in criminal activities and you hear from their family, you'd hear that, you know, they wanted to join the army, you know, or they were in the army, you know. And in that case, it mightn't be surprising when you see things like 3 elite Coast Guards charged with murder. three Coast Guard officers from the elite Coast Guard squad. 3 of them charged with murder.
That a two-parent house balance. I am here to say that yes, the man brings something to the table, the woman brings something to the table that gives the child a better foundation in not just self but moral values, right? No, I'm not saying who, but it is more. But I just want to address like 2 of the comments, right? So Hex Senpai specifically tagged men. He said many cases men are prevented from being in their child's life by said mother. And whilst it is, I do understand and agree that that is sometimes the case, not all the time. We do know there are mothers that beg for the father to be in their life. There are a lot of times in this particular case here where it is men are prevented. It's not so much that they're prevented, but they would like to be in the child's life at their convenience, when they're ready on their terms. And it's not often very practical or feasible because they often want to come whenever, and it's not structured, it's inconveniencing, etc. Again, not saying that it isn't the case where some women are spiteful and vindictive and they'll be like, no, this child is not yours after you know full well the child looking just like you. After you don't spend 2 years living with the child and then you want to try to say, nah, he have a new daddy, no. Like, I'm not saying them things don't exist, it very much does exist. That is one thing. And then ICE-B868 says women make poor choices and men, they need to take accountability. And I agree as well. I very much agree. There are times when it is we see men and we know for well that they're not good. not to take away from that. But I like to know, in the instance where it is, we are seeing more men in society that aren't good choices. Why aren't we having a movement to make men proper men? Because you could stand up and say ISB 868 that you're a good man, and it have women who would be thinking in their head, you're not somebody I wouldn't have a child with. Every man in their mind thinks they're good men. And Nathan, I don't know if on your life you get it. I know I get it on mine. Everybody thinks they're the best man out there and that they do no wrong, even though they're married and still shooting shots. Even though, they just not the very best. And I don't mean it in a way to sound condescending, but I think one of the things that we need to start doing is recognizing that whilst it is we are making women wives, when it is we are growing up children, we need to make men husbands.
I agree 100%, Ria. Nothing you said, I disagree with there. In these discussions, to me, balance is often needed. Where, as you were saying there, yes, there is the case where they are spiteful women, but there is also the case where they are negligent men. That is also true. There is the case of spiteful women, but there is the case of negligent men, and I will never deny that. There are many negligent men out there, men who fully well know what they should be doing, and they are not doing, they are neglecting that. And then there are some cases that are complicated, where the mother might be difficult, but the man might use that as an excuse to get away from his responsibilities. So that's the whole thing with the complexity of this. That's why, if you're going according to how the older folks would have said, and proper older cultures, they would say marry, stick to a permanent relationship that you cannot escape, and then you have children inside of that kind of structure. That makes sense to me, because everything else gets really complicated and kind of hard to deal with. Because the woman could, so you could say, like you're saying, sometimes the man wants to do it at his own schedule, and that might be true. He might want to do it at his own schedule, but kind of what you're saying there is that the mother wants him to do it at her schedule. You understand? It's either his schedule or her schedule. There isn't a neutral schedule they could do it at, because they aren't together. They have two separate schedules. Two separate schedules. Yes, it's jail you can't escape. That was the idea originally. And that's what made the structure so stable for growing our family, because stability is needed to grow a family. Now that we have moved away, wow, I don't want to go in jail in a relationship. Okay, that's fine. You don't have to imprison yourself in a relationship. But now you see the instability that has taken root across society, because no one wants to be in jail inside of a relationship. Everyone wants to be free. So you are free and your children are free too, and they are robbing people. A woman, 91, followed from the bank, dragged from car, robbed of $60,000. These are things that men who don't even have that general moral compass are doing. Some of the bandits back in the 80s might not have done something like this because they grew up with a little more morals than that.
Can I ask a question, Nathan?
Yeah.
I don't know if you would have the statistics on this as yet. So I hear you when you say 80% of persons who are involved in criminal activity are from single-parent households or female-led single
mothers,
right? Right, single mothers. My question is, what percentage of single mother households produce criminals? Like, on the flip side, I would like to know, is it that single parenting, females single parenting,
not the majority,
outright
not the majority of them. It is a small minority that produces criminals. That's why I say all these discussions always require balance, and I regularly try to point this out to give a little counterbalance when I see things like this. I'm not saying that a single mother cannot. I am saying that the evidence points that it is much more difficult to do. So that single mother would have a lot more to do. And one of the problems, I think, this is my opinion, one of the problems I think we have is when we don't recognize that a single mother is at a handicapped position. So we have a society that kind of promotes it in a way where they kind of make it seem like, that's a good thing to aspire to, and they could do it just as well. And the reality is they cannot do it just as well. It is not just as easy. And it generally, statistically, has some negatives from it. Now, if you end up in such a situation, that's not to say that you're doomed and it's all going to end up negative, because the ones, as you asked, that's a very good question. It's not the majority of single mother households that create bandits. That's not true. It's the vast minority. Vast minority. And as I've pointed out before, fathers, male role models, don't only work when the father is the biological father inside of his biological children's homes. They work, fathers around households also work. So a grandfather, uncle, and I mean, these things shouldn't be some complicated, unique, amazing revelation to people who grew up. You grew up, you remember the place your uncles, well, if you had good uncles, I'm hoping you had good uncles, the place good uncles, good big brothers, good male big cousins, good grandfathers, the place they had, the disciplinarian role, the role of making sure, I've heard it said that fathers' jobs are to keep their sons out of prison and their daughters off of stripping pools. And that kind of idea.
Strippers make around.
Okay.
So here's my question.
So do criminals.
I have with regards to these things. Do you not think maybe that even if somebody has a two-parent household, I get they may have more guidance, the father may be stricter to put things in place and conditions and whatnot. But if it is that they belong to not a certain area, to say I'm stereotyping areas, but when it is you're part of a culture that is a particular way, the influence there is greater, obviously. So do you think that that has more of a play than the type of household?
If 80% of people in jails are from single mother homes, that goes without saying that the other 20%. So it's not only those. There are people that grow up. I know, I get into that. I'm using this to start off. So there are people who grew up with mommy and daddy and still end up on the crooked. There are many different reasons for it. One of the main reasons when I look at it is cultural. One of the ways you could see this evidence to me is the main fact that you see racial representations in certain crimes. In Trinidad and Tobago, let's speak bluntly, in Trinidad and Tobago, violent crime is overrepresented by Afro-Trinidadians. That is a fact. And just as I say on the single parenting side, an important part, I think, if you're a single mother and you still want to do well, an important part is to understand the factual reality that you are working on a kind of handicap and you'd have to counterbalance those things. I think just like that, you have to be able to think on a factual, realistic head. So it is a fact that violent crime is overrepresented by Afro-Trinidadians. I don't think it's a racial defect. I don't think it's a genetic defect. I don't think the African blood has a gene in it that makes young nigglings like to kill people. I don't think that's a genetic thing. I am reasonably certain it is cultural. And what aggravates me so often is when I see people who are suffering from a cultural, as it were, cultural defect. A cultural defect. And they lean into their cultural defect. So, in black families, there's a underrepresentation of fathers. And then you see people that are black talking against the family setup. I'm like, you should be the last person to mention anything about that. Then you see people who are black talking about their culture and wanting to sing gunman tunes. Now, to me, if you are someone in that culture already being a victim of that culture, that's what you're supposed to be running from. If I have a young black son like that and I think he's at risk, you going to listen to country and western. Let's listen to jazz and Beethoven and Mozart. That's how you do things to act like you understand the reality of statistics. So this is to agree with you on the side that it is cultural. And just to throw in this as a counterbalance. In Trinidad and Tobago, there is an overrepresentation in white collar crime of the other racial majority, Indo-Trinidadian. And that has to do, to some extent, with how they view getting ahead. Cultural. Same thing. Cultural. Same thing. Cultural. So I think as I always say, the culture is the main thing. The culture is more important than the law. The culture is more important than the president. The culture is more important than the prime minister. The culture that you decide to adopt, the culture that you follow, the culture that you cultivate around you, the culture that you grow your children, your offspring, your who you have guardianship over, who look up to you, who look down to you. The culture. It's kind of all about the culture to me. Trinidadism is a destructive subculture expressed musically. Correct. I like how you phrase that, Kevon, because that's how I put it too. It is a destructive subculture expressed musically. It isn't music that is destroying a subculture. No, it's a subculture that exists. The triple killing no, it's a double killing, sorry. The double killing in St. Augustine today, where they killed a 16-year-old boy. It seemed like he wasn't even part of the target. He wasn't an intended target. They drove in, they're looking for one guy, they shoot. The 16-year-old thought they left. He ran outside looking to see his grandmother, and they killed him. Listen, that is a destructive subculture. But these three of these 6 men in the car were caught. And they were said to belong to one of the 3-letter gangs in Trinidad and Tobago. ABG something. Unique name. Resistance. Yes, ABG Resistance. Whatever. I don't know the history of all of them. They caught 3 of them alleged. The police said they caught 3 of them right as they left. Gang culture. That gang culture is that same destructive subculture. That is a destructive subculture. They are getting worse. And I keep saying this. I said this since the year was turning. And I keep saying this. They are not going to get better. They are going to keep getting worse. They are going to kill more people. They are going to kill people that are going to stun you when they kill them. The mother and daughter they killed down south. The 6-year-old girl they killed in Sangre Grande. This innocent one they killed recently. 3 teenage boys they killed in Darbody. And it may have been one of them that they were going after, but the other 2 were around, so for good measure, they just fixed them up too. It's not going away. And it's that subculture, that gang subculture in the young male community that is producing the Trinidad music, that is producing this dance, that is producing this violence. So it's not that we want to do away with the Trinidad music. We want to do away with the culture that produces the music. If some magical way we could wave a wand and ban all of that Trinidad music and it never plays again, that doesn't get rid of the culture. The subculture is still very much there and very strong. It's the culture, folks. It's the culture. All right, people. I think that's all I have for now. Are there any further comments or questions before I dive out? We are known as a party and fet nation throughout the world. Do you think some communities are trapped in the cycle? Yes and no. Yes and no. Yes and no. Yes and no, I would say, for trapped in the cycle. Yes, because the cycle is a self-propagating cycle. You don't need any outside influence for the cycle to continue. That's what I mean by self-propagating. You don't need outside influence for the cycle to continue. It would continue on its own. So yeah, there are some areas, some people, some communities trapped in that cycle where lack of fathers in the community creates a generation of young men that grow up wayward, and those wayward men produce children at a young age, and they are either killed, go to jail, or are not very good at the parenting business in the first place. So those wayward young boys produce another generation of fatherless young boys too. Yes, it's a trap. It repeats like that. So yeah, there's a trap side. However, there's the individual side where everyone has the ability to make a choice. You have the ability to make a choice. As a young woman in that community, you can make the choice. Nathan, what time do you go live? Been studying for exams in February. I usually finish around 9:10. I go live around 9:30. 9:30 is generally the time. If you're here 9:30 and I'm not here yet, maybe a little 10 minutes and I might be there, but it's usually somewhere around there. Yeah, so everyone has the opportunity to make an individual decision. You could decide as a young lady living in these, behave yourself, Nisi. You could decide as a young lady living in these communities that you are not going to make a child for any of these men. You are not doing that. You are going to wait for someone who wants to marry you to at least be willing to make that further step and sign a piece of paper and make it into a contract, and then you'd go about doing that. That's one way for you as a young lady. As a young man, you could decide that you're going to pull away from this. You're not going to allow yourself to fall into that. You could make that decision. You could get yourself lost in a hobby. Most men that escape those cycles are because they get themselves lost in something. Now, for women, what I said, for women, I think that my personal opinion, I think for a woman that might be easier to escape. For a young man in those communities, it might be a lot more difficult. I think most men that escape are men, boys, who get themselves lost, fully encapsulated in something. So, you join football, and you're training or playing a match every day. And when you're not training or not playing, you don't have time to waste energy doing something else. You're watching football videos, you're eating properly, you're getting enough sleep. Same with any sport. Or schoolwork, you dive into schoolwork, you dive into some area of academics, or some area of sports, or some area of some other extracurricular, some area of art, some area of online work, something. Get yourself fully lost, fully dive yourself into something. It could even be church. Some people do it with church. You dive into the church in the area, and generally speaking, the church boys, they aren't the gangsters. Generally speaking, you know, there are strange things out there, but I'm speaking generally. I was looking for the live but couldn't find it. I don't know why that is, June Robbie. I don't know why that is. Because I was live. As I've said before, anytime I miss the live, I would say so on my Discord server. If you are not on the Discord server, you can join it. The link should be on my TikTok profile. You can click that link and join my Discord server. You could always message me and get into direct contact with me there. And I also see when I'm missing the live, etc. Especially for the first 25 years. Exactly, Curvod. Exactly. Those first 25 years are key. And after those first 25 years, if you escape, very likely you're going to continue like that. First time joining the live and love it, will definitely join more often. Thank you, Collie Charles. Very appreciated. All right, folks. That's all I have for now. I'm glad those who just joined enjoyed. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. This has been the Mindful Live with Nathan Springer. You can catch me over on YouTube. Go subscribe to my YouTube channel, Nathan Springer, over there on YouTube. This has all been brought to you by Mindful Education, which is the educational institution that I run. We do learning pods, which are small homeschool style in-person teaching, where we're aiming to get that more relationship kind of based teaching, get back to the enjoyment of learning a bit more. We have classes ranging from preschool to lower primary to upper primary to lower secondary to upper secondary, full-time and part-time. If you have full-time interest in homeschooling, get into contact with us. We do that too. We also do private tutoring for most. Yeah, she's sleeping. She's been sleeping for a while. She was sleeping since the start of this live. We do private tutoring for most CXC and CAPE subjects. If you have interest in those, hit us up also. And I will see you guys for the next Mindful Live, which is going to be tomorrow evening, tomorrow night. Tomorrow is Wednesday. Wednesday is Tobago night. I will see you guys then. Peace out, people. Laters. Enjoy your night. Be safe.